Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. And again, happy Memorial Day to everyone. JW, Jackie's reminding us that we are the home of the free because of the brave. And I want to remind people today is a special day to celebrate those who paid the ultimate price, for our freedom. And we pay homage to them. And good evening, Catherine and Gray.
Thank you.
See, they didn't say anything about me. I'm not going to try to elicit any comments there. Good evening. Okay, great. And so, anyway, it's also. What are your thoughts on this topic?
I have so many thoughts, but I liked your presentation, and I really am really glad that you brought up meds, because I feel
Yeah,
like
thanks.
doctors give people meds who have issues with their liver, and it's like, but the liver needs to clear those meds. And I
That's
feel
right.
like the average person doesn't really think about that at all. I mean, the things that I think about as a nutritionist when someone has fatty liver is basically their liver has now reduced capacity to detoxify. So I'm trying to figure out how to help the liver detox, get back to normal functioning in that way. I also think about the fact that when you have fatty liver, you can have excess levels of cortisol, which can also kind of tie hand in hand with that adrenal issue. So supporting someone's adrenals if they seem like they might have that issue. And then what comes up a lot in my practice is also the liver clears estrogen. And so if they're having fatty liver issues or liver issues in general, they can have excess estrogen or estrogen dominance. And then in my clients, I see the growth of the fibroids or cysts or all these other things. So I think about all those things. And then also, I don't know the actual, you could probably break down why this happens, but as far as I know, I think it also reduces bile production in general when someone has fatty liver, which that means they may not be able to absorb properly vitamin A, D, E, and K, those vitamins and omega-3s. So you have to kind of change their diet, manage their blood sugar, manage stress. There's so many things. It's really just it's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah,
Depends on the person.
yeah. The fibrosis will contribute to biliary congestion, and so yeah, bile flow can be impaired, and of course the metabolism can be impaired because again you have hepatocellular dysfunction, so the cells are not able to carry out their normal metabolic processes, and the association with cardiovascular disease, again, the body, and the way I think of it is that you have a biochemical milieu that exists within the body, certainly in the bloodstream and the lymphatics and other parts, other channels that we probably don't look at on a regular basis. And so in this milieu, it becomes unbalanced or abnormal in the setting of hepatic dysfunction. And in that setting, as you pointed out, you don't remove toxins very well. So there's a toxic buildup. And so with that toxic buildup, you have a situation where you have organ dysfunction. So, hepatocytes, cardiomyocytes don't function very well in a toxic environment. Renal cells don't function well in the toxic environment. We talked about diabetes and insulin resistance, previous week. So you have an impairment of pancreatic function in a toxic environment associated with increased inflammation, as we talked about. So these similar mechanisms are occurring in the setting of liver dysfunction because, again, as you have toxic buildup, the gut microbiome is impaired, so you're releasing more inflammatory molecules through the gut, and therefore, more systemic inflammation. And you have this negative cascade of events: increased oxidative stress, increased inflammation, and those two common hit mechanisms, which are probably undergirded by dysbiosis, and then you're off to the races. And unfortunately, many people live in this chronic debilitated or chronic progressive debilitated state for a long time. And in our typical medical therapy, we're just treating outward symptoms. Someone has a little bit of swelling, we give them a diuretic. They have a little bit of ache, we give them a pain for ache. And we're just throwing medications superficially, treating symptoms while ignoring this underlying metabolic process. That if we attack it from that approach, we can make a major difference. And that's why, certainly in my practice, I imagine your practice, it sounds like a broken record, nutrition. And we promote, plant-based nutrition, as we outlined, omega-3, the best sources of plant sources, as well as anti-inflammatory molecules, best sources being plant sources. And I like the raw plant sources because it helps from an inflammatory standpoint. Outlaw mentions the concept of sugar. So it says people used to eat about 24 pounds of sugar a year. Now we eat 180 pounds or more yearly. And he says that's your liver issue right there. So what are your thoughts on the sugar issue?
Well, sugar is in everything. There's too much. If you're eating processed foods, you're likely eating a lot of high fructose corn syrup, which could definitely contribute to fatty liver. But it's really important that I'm always trying to educate my clients to read labels and really understand what's in their food and pay attention to the number of grams of sugar. And if they need to go on a quote unquote sugar detox, they should. But it's really best to focus on getting non-refined sources of sugar. So actually getting it from fruit or, something that comes with fiber as well, so that your body can digest it as better. But in general, if you're dealing with someone who has fatty liver and maybe they have adrenal issues, managing their blood sugar levels is so important. So reducing the overall intake of sweet foods is very helpful. And a lot of people don't want to do that, but it makes a very big difference. Again, tied to your talk last week about insulin resistance, but it makes a really, really big difference in weight loss, in people's moods, in their energy levels, all of that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And going on a sugar detox, we're actually starting to create sugar detox protocols, because we're recognizing that, because, we all on the standard American diet get, so accustomed to these processed sugars. Even when we're going on a raw plant detox, even though we're consuming plant originated sugars, which are healthier, I think, than the processed sugars, it's likely or possible that in certain situations, maybe in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, the early stages, maybe other conditions, cancer, other conditions, inflammatory conditions, et cetera, excess yeast formation, and many of these may be connected. It may be important to detox on sugar itself, and so sugar of any kind. So, sometimes, sugar detox for 6 months, 12 months, et cetera, can be beneficial in a lot of ways. So it can be tough, though. It can be tough.
Very tough. I think that also ties into your connection of the fatty liver and dysbiosis or leaky gut and stuff, because people are consuming so much refined processed stuff that their gut then gets compromised, and then that continues problems for them, basically. So just getting rid of some of those sugars, at least they're not contributing to the growth of candida or parasitic infection or all these different things. It can be very helpful for just clearing the gut issue in addition to resolving the fatty liver.
Yeah, I think you're right. And again, and we're talking about just basic fundamental things. We can come up, there's some data, I didn't go over it in my presentation. It talks about, drugs that can be used to in NASH. Pioglitazone is one drug that was mentioned. But I intentionally stayed away from it because there's so many natural things that could be done. And if you look at the pathophysiology and the mechanism of the onset of this disease syndrome isn't a deficiency in drug X, Y, or Z. It's a metabolic insult. And so the treatment should be to remove the metabolic insult.
That's really dope what you just said. Whenever we talk about things like this, it always makes me think about how I feel like diagnoses are not very helpful
That's right. That's right.
Right? Because it's just this term, a label, but it's not really getting specific to all of the issues that one person has that is contributing to the symptoms they're experiencing.
Well, I mean, I agree with you 100%. And not only may they not be helpful, and sometimes they can be harmful in the sense that it creates a labeling process where we say, okay, you know, NASH or NAFLD or whatever the case is.
Right.
It's okay. This drug's good for that. That drug's good for that, and it creates, or causes clinicians to not think about the underlying process, to overlook the underlying processes. So I think it's one of those things that, you're right, where we have to say, well, wait a minute, are we thinking about a disease label? Let's talk about the pathophysiology. And as we went through, was associated with processed food intake. Well, why aren't we doing research to remove processed foods and processed carbohydrates?
Exactly.
I mean, it's a simple approach.
Exactly.
Outlaw also mentions milk thistle and turmeric, which have been shown in the literature to have great for rebuilding the liver. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, milk thistle is an herb that is definitely known for liver cleansing. I don't know about turmeric. I know for the liver, I mean, it's anti-inflammatory in general. When I'm trying to help someone increase the functioning of their liver, I immediately use castor oil packs, I wish I really like for many things. But castor oil packs, castor oil is one of the only oils that goes beneath the dermal layer of the skin, can help reduce inflammation, can help detox organs. It really does help my clients, especially who have hormonal issues and they can't get rid of the excess hormones.
Mhm.
So I really like castor oil packs. And then, sure, you could work with certain herbs. I did work with milk thistle, or I had a client who had fatty liver who did take milk thistle at some point. But is that one herb? Or you can't use the herb like a band-aid. You really do have to look at your diet as well.
Yeah, I think I like to use herbs as an adjunct to an underlying diet. If you don't, if you're not really, if you have advanced, liver disease, fatty liver, inflammation, etc., you need to be on an aggressive diet. In fact, oftentimes what we do is we'll start patients on a nutritional detox diet, and then at the same time we'll then add supplements or targeted nutrients, say in week 1 or 2, to emphasize the importance of the nutritional intervention. And so that's certainly one with an importance. I think one of your clients here is giving a testimony here.
Thanks, Patty.
Castor oil packs and supplements. So good. So that underscores what you were just talking about. Is yeah, no one's deficient in any big pharma compounds, but people are deficient in vitamins and minerals, and deficient in optimal nutrition. So yeah, we in allopathic medicine has this approach where it's like, okay, let's find a drug or something that's the magic bullet. And there was one study, I think there was a study looking at the GLP-1 agonists, and it showed, a reduction in progression of cirrhosis in about 39% of the patients who took it, compared to 9% in placebo. However, you say, well, 39%, well, what happened to the other 61%?
Right.
And so, but I think if you use an aggressive nutritional regimen, you'd have a much higher percentage of success. And so I think that's certainly something that we need to keep in mind with, in our approach to treating this, which I think, I mean, when you really think about it, this is a pretty ominous type disease. I mean, we have someone who has liver, who has kidney failure, you can have dialysis, heart failure, where you can maybe have a transplant, et cetera. Liver failure or an LVAD, but liver failure, you have to get a transplant. Now, fortunately, someone can get part of a liver and transplant it, but then you're, tied to immunosuppressive drugs for the rest of your life. So you want to try to really avoid these advanced therapies. And our experience has been, hepatic liver dysfunction is very easy to treat with a nutritional intervention. It responds very well to nutritional intervention. I think the difficulty is getting over the psychology of people wanting to consume these liver toxic foods and therefore needing to consume liver toxic drugs. It's like alcoholics. We talk about alcoholics who are addicted to alcohol, and they continue to drink despite the fact that the liver gets worse. Right. But my patient addicted to baked chicken continue to eat the baked chicken despite the fact the liver gets worse. And so, even though this is considered non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic liver disease, in my opinion, could be attributed to substance addicted liver disease. And so substance addicted liver disease is alcoholic and non-alcoholic combined because it's related to people's addiction to either bad foods and subsequent requirement of medications.
We've seen that the liver can generally regenerate itself and people can improve, but from a medical perspective, when is the point of no return? Like, when can someone's liver just be like, oh, sorry?
Yeah, that, it's interesting. Really advanced cirrhosis is when you're in a situation where, I don't really like to say a no return, because I honestly don't know where that is. And the reason I say it is the following, because I've had patients who have severe, liver cirrhosis dysfunction, and when they are very aggressive in nutrition and many other things that we implement, they, even though the liver function may not return to absolute normal function, but it recovers to a point where it's sufficient. And so it's, I had a patient recently who was in the hospital, had, bad liver dysfunction, and he was, 80 years old, a lot of metabolic problems going on. And, I put him on a raw plant-based diet, and, he's being dialyzed, and we were going to do some other things. We reduced his medication consumption to put less stress on the liver. But, I got pushback, from family members. Even the patient was alert enough, said, well, I want, pancakes and syrup, whatever, the processed syrup. So even from the patient on his deathbed, the psychology of I want these foods was so strong that, so I think overcoming liver cirrhosis isn't the problem. It's this overcoming the addiction of the patient is really the problem. And they come up with all sorts of reasons like, well, I'm such and such years old or whatever the case is. But yet we're pouring in blood transfusions because they're bleeding out, or we're doing other things because they're bleeding out, but yet they're not willing to make that sacrifice of making the nutritional change. And then the entire milieu of the medical community is not insightful enough or knowledgeable enough about nutrition to emphasize the need for that change to be made. If someone's an alcoholic with alcoholic liver disease and they say, well, I want to drink, I mean, everybody said, no, you can't have a drink. But somebody with, processed sugar mediated, dead animal flesh mediated liver disease says, I want some bacon, eggs, and pancakes. They said, sure, have bacon, eggs, and pancakes. Yeah.
Right.
And so it's really, in my experience, I mean, I've seen people with pretty advanced liver disease, when they do the right thing, turn around. So I haven't really seen that or been able to identify that absolute demarcation. And maybe that absolute demarcation is at the absolute demise of the patient. Because when the liver completely goes kaput, the patient dies, you have excess acidosis, et cetera, and then you can't turn it around. But I think if you do the right things, even with advanced, as long as the patient is alive, there's some hepatic function that's adequate to where it can be turned around. And so that's my experience. And maybe, later on I'll have a different answer after I've looked at other patients. But I really think we need to, in fact, this whole discussion has stimulated me to talk to some of my colleagues who are hepatologists. And I would like to maybe place patients on a plant-based diet. We could probably do something where we, I can provide the food and they can follow the hepatic progression. Kathy says, I was diagnosed with a fatty liver a few years ago, was never followed up. Is this something I need to take serious and see my gastro? I think so. I think we'll definitely take it seriously. And the course of liver disease progression varies from person to person. And certainly Kathy Cravero, that the last name seems like a Hispanic surname. I don't know your background, but the genetic predisposition for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is higher in people of Hispanic origin, particularly Mexican Americans, compared to people of African origin from a genetic standpoint. And so the data shows that. I didn't put that in my presentation, but that's something that we should all be aware of. But that's clearly something that you want to okay, Cravero, she's Italian. Okay, so Italians are probably intermediate. Sorry about that. I hope I didn't. So, but anyway, so Gina O'Neill, Zeolite Extra is a great place to start. It's amazing to flush my glands, absolutely amazing. Zeolite removes heavy metals from the blood. You want to take it probably at night, sometimes in the morning, away from taking medications.
What is this, Dr. Montgomery? I don't know what zeolite is.
Yeah, zeolite is it's a similar as it's a combination of volcanic ash and sand, and it forms a honeycomb-like molecular structure that attracts molecules, positive ion molecules. It's along the same nutrient mechanism, I should say, as things like diatomaceous earth or other
it's
heavy
like
clays.
bentonite clay or diamond.
Bentonite.
Okay, I know those.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so it behaves like those molecules in terms of extracting ions and the like.
Okay.
So anyway, so the thing is that yes, Kathy, do follow up with your gastro, but also Kathy, if you're not on a plant-based diet, I would recommend doing that. You can also do a raw plant-based detox. Many people can get blood tests from any labs anywhere. We measure not only liver enzymes, but we look at albumin level, we look at ammonia level, we look at the PTNINR level. And so that's something that we look at to evaluate hepatic function, which can also be helpful. And there are other criteria that you can look at, platelet levels and the like. So all of these things are important.
A different perspective, Dr. Montgomery. Don't be mad at me. You know, I've actually had more than one client with fatty liver who I made go on a high plant-based diet, and they occasionally wanted fish or whatever, and they still were able to make great progress.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, don't shoot yourself in the foot if you can't do a whole thing, but we highly recommend, obviously, you get as aggressive as possible. But for some people, they can still do really well over time with some major changes just by increasing the amount of plant-based foods they're eating.
Yeah, and I think moving toward a plant-based diet is critical. What I do is, and you're right, you know, if someone goes from, you know, high processed foods and terrible things, and it goes more plant-based and having a little fish, you know, you can see improvement. The only reason I just, you know, try to speak in the absolute, because, you know, my experience, and you give them an inch, they take a mile. And by the time they're seeing me, they have a severe advanced disease.
Right.
And so there's little room for kind of, there's less wiggle room, I'll put it that way.
No, I agree with you, because so people usually, by the time they're seeing you, they're in real trouble. When they're seeing me, usually they're in trouble. So they're not like all
yeah, they have more wiggle room. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll start a plant-based diet. Thank you. Plus, I'll make an appointment with my doctor. All right. Thumbs up for
good job,
Kathy. Yeah, I think doing both, because you're taking, you know, the process in your own hand. You're doing something that's simple and straightforward, and then you're following up with your doctor. Freedom talks about fatty liver disease. Candida has invaded the liver and precipitated an immune response. That's, you know, certainly a possible mechanism, or any infection of that type. And an infection can trigger a systemic inflammation So it doesn't have to have Candida infiltrating the liver, but it can have a systemic inflammatory response that can indirectly affect the liver and cause, immuno disarray. Gina, I'm down 190 pounds. I changed everything. I had fatty liver, did scans. They said my liver is amazing. Congratulations, Gina. Again, an underlying testimony as to what you can do. Again, this channel is about empowering you to make the changes that can really turn yourself around. And oftentimes we are, we're historical. We go to the doctor, we get diagnosed with heart failure and diabetes and liver dysfunction, all that, and everybody come, all in disarray. But I'm here to tell you that these diseases are not as bad as you think. Now, they can be bad because if you continue to cause them or contribute to them, but by simply, change your diet and your lifestyle, you can make a major impact on your life overall. Zeolite, an amazing detox substance to keep on your diet. I use powdered form. We use zeolite in some of our detoxes. Marine phytoplankton is the best source of plant-based omega-3s I can find. Let's see, Kathy Craver, are you saying fish is not good then? I eat salmon, other fish. I'm going to just now say don't eat fish. I mean, I think especially, I think you should do 4 to 6 weeks, 100% raw plant-based foods and give yourself the best chance to turn things around. I mean, Esosa has an experience with patients. They do well without it. I mean, sometimes, if you drive without your seatbelt, you won't have a wreck and won't get but I just don't advise. I mean, I've driven a few short blocks without my seatbelt and I made it there safely. But I mean,
well, here's the thing, Dr. Montgomery. So when I'm telling somebody that they could eat fish, I'm not actually doing it randomly. I'm actually looking at their body type, like their Ayurvedic body type. I'm looking at their genetic background. Kathy said she's Italian, the land of the Mediterranean diet. But I do think that she should. The thing is that you have to stop the bleeding like you do, which when people are having really, really horrible situations. The detoxifying diet of like having a raw diet or having a fully plant-based diet is very necessary for a lot of people because it's like you spent 40 years pummeling your body with a bunch of stuff that is not helpful. I do find that sometimes based on certain people's body types though, that they tend to feel like, oh, I have to have, and I'm like, well, you don't really, but these are the things that could work for you based on your genetics, where you're from, and some of the stuff is sentimental. It's like I grew up eating this thing. And so now I have emotions attached. So as a nutritionist, I always to keep those things in mind. But I do look very carefully at, does this person need this? I've also noticed, strangely enough, I've had a few, I generally treat hormonal imbalances, with plant-based diets because it works really well. But then I have these random type O's who actually are hormonally imbalanced and they're plant-based. And when you start actually allowing them to eat some fish, they stop being hormonally imbalanced. And I'm like, well, that's weird. So I don't know. For me, there's not always, when I've seen a lot of patients, it makes me always feel like there's never one cut and fast, dry rule. I have to look at that specific person. But I do agree with you that you need to detoxify. If you're in a really serious situation, you should be detoxifying regardless.
Yeah. The best food is, and even if you look at, animals outside the human animal kingdom, dogs that are natural carnivores. So these are natural carnivores. When they get really sick, they go to plants only. So fasting and plants only. So
right.
In that setting, it's kind of an original food. Any final thoughts or comments as we close out? Get ready to close out, Esosa.
No, not really. Besides the fact that I think this kind of goes back to the general theme of, you got to manage your blood sugar levels, eat real food, deal with your stress, move your body. I mean, it feels like we just say the same thing.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We're trying to come in different ways of coming into the same
different
thing.
angles. Yeah. We're saying the same thing, people. We're saying the same thing.
Yeah. It's funny. It reminds me, I was in medical school and we were in class, and I was one of the professors he had a slide up, and he was making a funny commentary, and the slide had a cartoon, and it had, it was a veterinarian, a diagnostic and treatment book, and then it had all of these different diseases in terms of how to treat, let's say, a horse with disease 1 through 15. And all the diseases, you had the same treatment: shoot.
Oh my
In
God.
other words, they use euthanasia a lot in animals that have these certain diseases. But anyway, it sort of reminds me of what we do. It's okay, disease 1 through 15, plant-based diet, exercise, fresh air, sunshine, et cetera, et cetera. But
Exactly.
anyway, but no, thanks a bunch. Good to have you on, Esosa.
Thank you
I
for
will see
having
you
me.
backstage as I close out. As always, I enjoy and I learn a lot in this discussion, even as we're presenting information. I learn from your questions and comments. And this non-alcoholic fatty liver disease condition is one that is very problematic and is on the rise. So again, share this information with loved ones or friends, anyone who you think may benefit from it. And of course, if you haven't had a chance to subscribe, please do so. And again, give us a thumbs up, show us some love. And until next time, keep it fresh, natural, and live.